Okay, now we're recording the session, so there's that. Yeah, so last week I sent you guys some videos, some recordings on interest groups. I hope those were, legible. Hope that was okay. Hope you could watch those. Hope you could see it. Our goal. So let's look at the calendar together. So today's the 24th. I think it fits the bill for us to go live on Tuesdays. So let's plan on doing a live session on Tuesday coming on the 31st. And then we'll plan to allow the 26th to be a recording session. Wrong one. All right. So I think that'll be how we'll do it, right? And so what we just said is we'll do a recording on Thursday, which I'll send you, soon, at least before class time on Thursday. And then we'll meet again on the 31st. All right. What is poppin', Josiah Roebuck? It is all good. Isn't the 31st spring break? Is the 31st spring break? Is next week your spring break? Really? Well, look, if it's spring break, then we'll all go to the islands. I'll go to Jamaica. You folks will go to the Bahamas. All right. So if we're on spring break next week, I obviously haven't looked at the calendar in a while. I'll send you an email and let you guys know what we'll do. I'll let you know what we'll do. Yeah, Taylor. Hey, yeah, cruises are real cheap. That's right. Seems like a rough place to be. Okay, so I don't intend to talk to you forever today. These strange circumstances, we'll hit it hard for about a half hour or so. I just really want to make sure I give you some things about political parties, and then we'll move on and we'll let you guys do whatever else you're going to do. All right, so I have already hit the recording, so let me talk serious for a little minute. Well, wait, first, before I do that, we'll keep the test date the same. I guess I have to look at the calendar again, but we'll keep the test date the same. I have to get better teaching on how to put the test online, but we'll put the test online. It'll be somewhere in the D2L thing, and we'll do it that way, right? So we'll still keep the multiple choice format. All right. So our goal is to talk about political parties. Let's start off with the definition. I already put together a recording to talk about the political parties and some other details, but let's do something a little bit different. A political party. Remember, I like to give you guys nice packed definitions, right? Compound definitions. When you stack these meanings on top of each other, then that means that you've got something that you can use. All right. So a political party is an organization of ideologically similar people. Remember the two dominant ideologies that hold fast in American politics today are the liberals and conservatives, the liberals being the Democrats, the conservatives, of course, being the Republicans, right? So it's an organization of ideologically similar people that nominates members for office and works for their election against the other organization's candidates. That then means that Democrats work against the election of Republicans and Republicans do the same. This organization of ideologically similar people that is working to get their members in office want to do this so that their members can run the government. And once their members are running the government, they want to be in a position so that they can shape policy for the benefit of their members. Yes, Abigail, I'll send you a link to the recording. I want you to be impressed that I now know how to put these recordings on YouTube. So I'm going to send them to you. All right. So in the recording, we did some things about comparing interest groups to political parties. We looked at the comments from the first four presidents, and then we talked about some of the defining characteristics of of a political party. So now let's pay some attention to the four important functions of political parties. Right. Yes, Brianna, I'll find a way to, somewhere on here, there's a button that says participants. So I'll find a way to do some kind of attendance on here. I probably won't be that strict about it because who knows what people have going on, but I will find a way to reward people that come to the live session, right? We're here, we might as well, look, we'll get something for it. Okay, 4 functions of political parties. Number 1, with political parties engage in the nomination of candidates for office. You'll remember with me that we are in the midst of the Democratic nomination process. As of March 24th, Bernie Sanders is still in the nomination process, right? He's still in the runnings. However, it's not looking good for him. Democratic voters around the country across racial and class lines have decided that they like Joe Biden. And so that's what we see right now, the political party engaged in the function of nominating candidates for office. A second job of political parties. If you can mute your microphones, that would be real, neighborly for your fellow students. A second function of political parties is to structure the voting choice for the citizens. Right. So it's not like if we're thinking about the Democratic nomination, you do not have in the general election in November, you don't have the option of choosing 20 people. It's going to be one Democrat and it's going to be one Republican for president. And that's what we mean by structuring voting choice, reducing the number of candidates on the ballot. Another function of the political party is that they propose alternative government programs. Alternative government programs. Let's go somewhere together. I don't know if I've shown you this before. Politics1.com. Let me show you this webpage. Hopefully you can see it. Here is where I go because they keep an up-to-date list on the web pages that the political parties have available. Okay, so let's go, for example, to the DNC webpage. Remember, we're saying one of the key functions of the political party is to propose alternative government programs. So what the political party does is they create what's called a platform. We're on the Democratic Party's page. Eventually, somewhere, I'll find the word platform. Here's the platform, right? So essentially, both the political parties create a PDF that allows you to read the platform of the Democratic Party. So if you believe yourself to be a Democratic voter, then you go here, look at the party platform, and read what they say about themselves. And if you agree with the way that Democrats see the world, then you might actually be a Democrat. Let's look at the Republican Party page. Let's go back here. If you believe yourself, for example, to be a Democrat, yet you have never been to the Democratic Party's webpage, you've never been to the Republican Party's webpage, how do you know that you are a Republican? All right. So let's just look at it right quick. Somewhere on here, put your glasses on. Somewhere on here, it's going to say the platform for the Republican Party. Here it is. Then it'll prompt us to download a PDF. We'll download it. I'll just show you the table of contents. We're saying that the third function of political parties is to propose a series of programs that you can identify with the Democratic or the Republican Party, and then that's how you determine whether or not you're going to vote for Democrats or Republicans. And so that's the Republican Party's platform. All right. The fourth function of political parties is to acknowledge that they serve to coordinate the actions of elected officials. Coordinate the actions of elected officials, and in the process of doing so, it bridges the gaps between the separation of powers. So, for example, Donald Trump, as the Republican president of the United States, is going to be able, remember we said that the president of the United States is the leader of the political party that he's a member of, right? So the president, as Donald Trump, then as the Republican president, is able to coordinate activities with Republicans in Congress, specifically because they share party alliances, right? All right, good, good, good. Checking on the group chat, looks like you folks are talking about something. Alex Olive says he's a member of the Green Party. I wonder who you're going to vote for. There will be a Green Party candidate on the ballot in 2020. Are you actually going to vote for the Green candidate? If you're going to vote for the Green candidate and the Green candidate does not win, then have you thrown away your vote? Actually, that's actually kind of like a test question, right? You will never get a political science professor to say that you've thrown away your vote even if you've chosen someone that is, not, let's say, not going to win. Mr. Pleasance. That's right. Okay, now let's look at this slide. Your textbook goes through a good page and a half to describe to you what's called the responsible party model of government. This true, this presupposes, wrong, this talks about the preferred relationship between the political party and the voters. If all four of these things are true, then you have a full functioning relationship between political parties and citizens. That means that things are working well. And if you can look at these four ideal roles and find that one or two or three of these are missing, then maybe the relationship between the political party and the voter, maybe there's something wrong with it, right? Number one, the responsible party model of government says that political parties should present a clear and coherent program to the voters, right? Yes. Hey, Gregory, put your first and last name in there. Right. So we just went to the web pages for both the Democratic and the Republican parties, and we saw that they present their programs. Now, whether or not it's clear and coherent, you'll have to read it to determine. Number two, the responsible party model of government says that voters should be able to choose candidates according to the party platform. So when you go to vote, do we accept that voters have actually looked at the platform and then have, made their choices based on that, based on their read of the platform? Number three, once the person wins office, or once the political party wins office, they should do the things that they said they were going to do, right? And then fourth, voters should hold the political party accountable at the next election for executing the programs that they promised. All right, so that's enough of that. We'll call that the responsible party model of government. The chat box has stopped moving. Am I having a technical difficulty or something? Oh no, the thing's still working. All right, I got nervous for a second. Maybe I hit a button wrong and the thing logged me off. All right. Okay, so that's good enough. Thank you. That's good enough for the responsible party model of government. All right, now let's talk about this. Let's do some definition work to make sure that you have everything possible that you need possible in order to score good on the test. We'll pull those definitions right out of the textbook, but let's run through these in a somewhat fast fashion, right? Now, divided government is defined as a situation where one party controls the White House and another party controls one house of Congress, right? So unified government would be the circumstance that happened, in 2017, where the Republicans controlled the presidency in the name of Donald Trump, and then the Republicans held a majority in the House, and the Republicans held a majority in the Senate. However, 2018, the Democrats were able to take control over the House of Representatives. So now you have a situation that's called divided government, where the Republicans control the White House, the Republicans control the Senate. However, the Democrats control the House of Representatives. Divided government. Next definition. That SMDP there stands for Single Member District Plurality, SMDP, Single Member District Plurality. That is the reality of governance in the United States. That's how elections work in the United States. Single member. That means only one person has the ability to win the election. All right. District. And we're talking about congressional elections here, when that one person wins the election, they get to represent the entirety of the district. They don't have to share it. If we accept the word district to be a stand-in for national elections, federal elections, then we can talk about the presidency. When one person wins the presidency, then that person is the whole of the presidency. You don't have to share it. And then that P there stands for plurality. Yes, you do have a system of majority rule, but when you get down to local elections, or even if you take into account the popular vote outside of the electoral college vote, American elections do allow for winners to take office from them receiving a plurality of the vote, right? So single member district plurality, that is the technical name. That's kind of the fancy stick your pinky out when you're drinking your tea name. Now, the more general name is called winner take all, right? A winner take all election is one, this is for you, Alex, a winner take all election is one where the popular vote actually determines the rules, right? It determines the winner, right? Now, in a presidential cycle, the popular vote by state feeds into how many electoral votes the candidates win, right? So winner takes all means that the candidate that has a plurality of the votes, not necessarily a majority, but at least more votes than the opposition, that person gets to win the office. First past the post is a term used, from equestrian life. I don't know, horse racing, right? The horse that gets its nose to be the first one past the post, that's the horse that wins the race. So that's the reality of American elections, SMDP. This is opposed to proportional representation. Like in Britain, elections occur on the basis of political party. Elections are dominated by a system called proportional representation, where people vote based on the political party that they prefer, and the percentage of seats in the legislature is determined by the percentage of votes that that party receives. That's called proportional representation. That's not what happens in the United States. Let's go to the next set of definitions. I'm trying to move with efficiency because I don't want to be on the line with you forever. All right. A critical election is an election that produces a lasting electoral realignment. One more time. A critical election is an election that produces a lasting electoral alignment. Okay. Now, that definition means we need to know what a realignment is. So a realignment is where a group of voters change their party loyalty, right? So a realignment would be where a group of Democrats decide, you know what, we're going to vote Republican now. Or vice versa, a group of Republicans say, we're going to change our party loyalty and now we're going to vote Democrat. That doesn't mean that it's a critical election just because it happens once. Then the next election cycle, those people go back to the parties that they're comfortable with. A critical election is where a group of voters leave their party and stay gone. And we're going to see, this next point will be on the test. We're going to see that in the last 60 or so years, the group of voters that have, that have functioned through a critical election would be white Southerners. We're going to find in just a second, matter of fact, let's do it now. We're going to find that white Southerners used to vote for the Democratic Party. And then, especially after the election of Richard Nixon, 1968, you have white Southerners leaving the Democratic Party, voting Republican. That happened in strong form in 1968, and here we are in 2020. The Democrats will win the South. Okay, so let's do a little bit of detail on that before we go into the different types of ticket voting. Let me introduce you, Let me bring to you Strom Thurmond, right? I want you to know a few things about Strom Thurmond because he helps, this history helps to tell us what a critical election is. Strom Thurmond ran for president in 1948. You'll Google Strom Thurmond and find out a few things about his racial history, right? You'll find out a few things about his racial history. No, Caroline, let's say no, that the 2016 election, unless you have a people that change their party loyalty, the 2016 election would not be considered a critical election. Number one, because it just happened. And remember, we're saying a critical election is an election that produces a lasting electoral realignment. So we would be able to justifiably call the 2016 election critical if we saw a realignment happen, and then, I don't know, 2032, that realignment is still in place, right? But I don't know that unless you've got some details. I don't know that we've seen a realignment in 2016 in the first place, right? Maybe. I know, maybe, right? Maybe. But nah, not really. Okay, so let's go with Strom Thurmond. Strom Thurmond, we know a few things about him. Put your glasses on. Strom Thurmond opposed desegregation of the military. He was opposed to the elimination of the poll tax and the passage of the 24th Amendment. Strom Thurmond was opposed to any civil rights or black political agenda that the NAACP was putting forward. In the 1940s, Strom Thurmond was the standard bearer for Southern, let's say, Southern Democrats who were opposed to the civil rights agenda being put forward by the National Democratic Party. And so these folks came together and became known as the Dixiecrats. And the Dixiecrats, under the leadership of Strom Thurmond, were able to pull together a block of votes. They called themselves the Solid South, and Strom was able to win 2.4% of the vote in 1948. You can't win with 2.4% of the vote, but that means that his election, rather his candidacy, was at least interesting to a million people. To get to know Strom Thurmond in the 1940s, I offer you this quote. Strom Thurmond once said, and if I wasn't recorded, I would affect a Southern accent. But because this recording might live forever, I don't want to crack that joke forever. So Strom Thurmond said, I want to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that there's not enough troops in the army to force the Southern people to break down segregation and admit the Negro race into our theaters, into our swimming pools, into our homes, and into our churches. That's a quote that we use to say Strom Thurmond was rather hostile to the civil rights agenda. Y'all laughing at me because I didn't want to crack that joke, and that joke sticks around for like 10 years. And somebody could look back at this recording and be like, oh, well, ain't no telling what Jones was talking about. All right, now let's move forward 20 years or so. Let's move forward and let's consider Barry Goldwater. If you folks are conservatives in the class, perhaps Barry Goldwater is someone, if you haven't read his stuff, it's probably true that the Republicans that you're paying attention to, especially you, Mr. Pleasance, right? The Republicans that you're paying attention to have probably been reading some Conscience of the Conservative, 1960, right? Matter of fact, not now, but after we talk, you can put Conscience of a Conservative inside YouTube, and in his 1964 campaign, they produced somewhat of a documentary, and essentially the theme of that documentary is to show how destructive the civil rights movement and the anti-Vietnam War movement is, right? And so that's something, right? So 1960, Barry Goldwater said, despite the recent holding of the Supreme Court, I am firmly convinced not only are integrated schools not required, but that the Constitution does not permit any interference whatsoever by the federal government in the field of education. Barry Goldwater, 1960, says it may be just or wise or expedient, but they do not have a civil right to do so, which is protected by the federal constitution or which is enforceable by the federal government. You will please recall in 1954, the Supreme Court rendered the decision in Brown versus Board of Education, where it overturned de jure segregation, right? Where it said segregation is against the law, is a violation of the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. And here you see Barry Goldwater opining negatively against the decision in Brown versus Board of Education. Now I bring Barry Goldwater to you because he enhanced far right, or maybe far right conservative ideology, right? William Buckley is doing some other things on his side of the conservative street, but for Barry Goldwater, he was opposed to the civil rights legislation. He argued against the social services safety net as proposed in the New Deal, and Barry Goldwater was somewhat popular in the Democratic nomination, trying to unseat Lyndon B. Johnson, right? 38% of the popular vote. Now let's move from Barry Goldwater, and then let's talk briefly about Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon, right? He ran for president in 1968 this time, and Richard Nixon is able to be successful. Let me cut it short. One of the things Richard Nixon is able to do is he's able to come into the American South and contact, in particular, white voters. And he says, look at you folks, aren't you upset with your National Democratic Party? Look at them passing the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act and the 24th Amendment and all of this affirmative action stuff. You're upset about this. I'm upset about this. He says, if you leave your Democratic Party, this is Nixon as the Republican talking to Southern Democrats. He says, if you leave the Democratic Party and come join me in the Republican Party, then we will reverse the abrogations of federal power into your state's rights. We will fight against the civil rights agenda. We will return states back to their natural sovereignty. Then he was using dog whistle politics, using phrases like, we'll be against forced busing and the like. And it worked. 1968, white Southerners leave the Democratic Party and vote rolls with with the Republicans to support Richard Nixon. Now that I mentioned Richard Nixon, I put a slide together. His chief of staff, H.R. Haldeman, in 1994, right, decades after their administration was over, he put together a book where he revealed some of their private conversations. And you'll read through some of this stuff, and bigotry of Richard Nixon is on full display. I mean, you don't have to take this slide for it. You can just put, some of these things in YouTube and listen to some of the audio tapes yourself. Now, I said all of that to say, let's go back to the definitions, that a critical election is an election that produces a lasting electoral realignment. And the last critical election where a mass group of people left their political party and joined the opposite political party was when white Southerners did it in the 1968 election of Richard Nixon. That's that point. Now let's go on to these next definitions, and then I'll probably get ready to stop talking. When you go to vote, you'll see in, Now, I just saw an article that said that your Georgia governor and the Secretary of State's office is going to mail primary ballots to Georgia voters, right? So remember that they canceled based on the corona activity. Nixon told Dixiecrats to vote for him so he could stop civil rights. That's the story I'm telling you. Yeah, that's the story I'm telling you, right? Okay, so your Georgia government is going to mail ballots to people so that you can participate in the Georgia primary that was postponed due to the corona activity. So what you have to do if you're a Georgia voter is you have to go to the Secretary of State's webpage and update your address. Make sure that they have the correct address, because they're going to mail you your ballot because in-person voting was delayed. Now, when you get that ballot, well, at least the one in November, when you look at a general election ballot, you're going to see that at the top of the ticket is going to be the election for the presidency. But then you're going to see You're going to see senators on the ballot. You'll see your congressman, and then you'll see local representatives, right? Your state senator, your state legislature on the ballot. A person who says, I know that I'm a Republican and I might not know who these individual Republicans are, but I know that I'm a Republican. So they go straight down the ballot and choose all the Republicans, even if they don't know who those people are. That's called straight ticket voting. Straight ticket voting is where the voter chooses all the candidates from the same political party. Straight ticket voting. Split ticket voting presupposes that the voter has a certain amount of knowledge. It presupposes that the voter knows the difference between the Democrat and the Republican running for office, and they're not so ideologically, you know, stuck that they can vote for a Democrat on one office and can vote for a Republican on the other office. So split ticket voting then is where the voter chooses candidates from either political party based on their knowledge up and down the ballot. That's enough of that. Now, we tend to think of American politics in a left-right continuum, right? So I'm using my right hand, right? It's probably looking different on camera, but on the right hand of American politics, you see the Republicans and the conservatives. On the left hand of American politics, you see the Democrats and the liberals. Someone who says that they are in the middle of the party conflict between Democrats and Republicans, someone who says that they hold some Democratic views on some issues, but some Republican views on other issues, that's a person who says that they're a moderate, right? They believe that they're a moderate. Mm-hmm. And then a person who says, a moment ago, I forget who just said it, but someone said that they're a Green Party member. So an independent is someone who says, I'm not a Democrat, I'm not a Republican, I'm going to vote for a third party, right? And that's what you call an independent. So a moderate is someone that in these highly partisan times, they act as if they would vote for Democrats or Republicans based on the issues and based on the candidate. And I would have you think about whether or not a true moderate is like a pink elephant that can fly, right? Something that doesn't really exist, something that only exists in the imagination of a less informed voter, right? I question whether or not someone is truly going to be a moderate. I wanted to question that. Okay, so I've been talking for about a half hour or so I'm going to stop talking here, right? Now, let me tell you a little thing what I'm getting ready to do. What I'm going to do for the 5 o'clock class, right? You guys are my 3:30 friends, my 3:30 class. I did this little piece on those definitions. So that's going to be this recording. In the 5 o'clock class, so I don't bore myself by saying the same thing over, I'm going to move on and I'm going to talk about the history of the political parties. We'll talk about why there's a two-party system, and then we're going to do the Lipset and the Robert Michel's arguments. So in order for you to have a full discussion of political parties from me, I'm going to ask you to please pay attention to both of those recordings. All right, that is all I want to say about that. Okay, I'm ready to stop talking. If you have any questions, if you don't put it in that chat box, then you can send me an email. I am begging your forbearance. Getting a lot of emails, and I am trying to shift my way through them, right? And yes, the 5 o'clock stuff will be on the test. You know, hey, Ledesma, I'm not 100% sure that this collaborate room doesn't change, like the link doesn't change. I don't know if that happens, right? Now, you're absolutely welcome to come back at 5 o'clock, but I'm going to go into the thing through the D2L for the 5 o'clock class. So I don't know, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this recording on YouTube so that you can catch it. Okay, so the next time we'll do a live session. Well, if spring break is next week, it won't be next week, right? But the next time we have class on a Tuesday is the next time we'll do a live session. And hey, Ashley, I'll put the video. I'm probably going to email it to you, but I'll probably post it also in the content side. Yes, Zane Russell, I will. Delgado, we will acknowledge spring break. We're going to go to the islands of our minds because we are quarantined. All right, that's it. Let me stop the recording somehow. And I thank you all for your kind attention.